Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. A Flight into Hope. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of a modest townhouse in Atlanta as Amara Ellison, a bright-eyed 10-year-old, meticulously packed her carry-on bag. Her small hands moved with deliberate care as she double-checked her checklist, her favorite book, a sketchpad, crayons, and a small stuffed bear her late mother had given her. Today was a big day, and her excitement was infectious. Her father, Jordan Ellison, a hardworking single parent, stood by the door with a mix of pride and trepidation. "You sure you've got everything, sweetheart?" he asked, his deep voice filled with love and concern. Amara looked up with a confident smile. "Yes, Daddy. You checked it twice already." She giggled, her laughter filling the room like sunshine. Jordan knelt to her level, his broad hands resting gently on her shoulders. "You're going to do amazing things, Amara. Remember, this trip isn't just about you, it's for your mom too. She would have been so proud of you." Amara nodded solemnly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Her late mother, a passionate advocate for education, had always told her, "The world is yours to explore, Amara. Don't let anyone dim your light." This trip, a special invitation to attend a National Youth Leadership Conference, was her first big step toward fulfilling that dream. Jordan straightened and handed Amara her boarding pass. "First class, huh? My little princess flying in style." Amara grinned. "You said I deserve the best, Daddy." "And you do," he affirmed, though his heart ached at the sacrifices he'd made to afford the ticket. For Jordan, this was more than just a flight, it was a symbol of Amara's limitless potential. At the bustling Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, the energy was palpable. Amara held tightly to her father's hand as they navigated the crowded terminal. Despite the chaos, her eyes sparkled with wonder at the sight of planes taxiing on the runway and travelers bustling about. At the check-in counter, the airline representative's expression softened when she saw Amara. "First class? Traveling alone, young lady?" she asked warmly. Amara nodded proudly. "It's my first time flying." Jordan explained, "She's attending a youth leadership conference in D.C. I've arranged for her to be escorted by the flight crew." The representative smiled. "We'll take good care of her, Mr. Ellison." As they approached security, Jordan knelt again to hug Amara tightly. "Remember, be polite, stay close to the crew, and don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it." "I will, Daddy," she promised. They said their goodbyes, and Amara waved enthusiastically as she joined the line for unaccompanied minors. She felt a mixture of nerves and excitement as she clutched her ticket and ID, eager to embark on her first adventure alone. The first-class cabin was a world of luxury. Plush leather seats, warm lighting, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee created an air of exclusivity. Amara's seat, 2A, was by the window, offering her a perfect view of the clouds she was eager to soar through. As she settled in, a flight attendant approached. Her name tag read Sarah Caldwell. Though her smile was professional, her eyes carried a flicker of hesitation as she glanced at Amara. "You must be Miss Ellison," Sarah said, her voice clipped. "Yes, ma'am." Amara replied cheerfully. "This is my first flight." Sarah's lips curved into a tight smile. "Well, enjoy the experience." Her tone lacked warmth, but Amara, too excited to notice, nodded eagerly. As passengers boarded, Amara received curious glances. A few whispered among themselves, but she paid no mind. She was here, in first class, just like anyone else. She deserved to be. Minutes later, another passenger entered, Charles Abernathy, a stocky man in his mid-40s with a booming voice and an air of entitlement. He glanced at Amara, then at Sarah, raising an eyebrow. "Is this a child?" he asked, loud enough for others to hear. Sarah hesitated, her gaze darting between Charles and Amara. "Yes, Mr. Abernathy. She's a minor traveling alone." Charles frowned. "In first class?" Amara, sensing the tension, shrank slightly in her seat. She clutched her bear, her earlier confidence faltering. Sarah's professional demeanor wavered as she leaned closer to Charles. I understand your concern, Mr. Abernathy. Let me see if I can find a solution. In the galley, Sarah's mind raced. The airline's protocol for unaccompanied minors was clear, but her past mistakes loomed over her like a shadow. Ethan's voice echoed in her mind, do what's necessary to make him comfortable. She knew what Charles represented, an influential client who could make or break her fragile career. Returning to the cabin, Sarah knelt by Amara's seat. Miss Ellison, she began, her tone measured, would you mind moving to another section of the plane? We have a more private area that might be more suitable for you. Amara blinked, confused. But, my seat is here. Sarah forced a smile. I know, but this will make your journey more comfortable. Before Amara could protest, Charles chimed in, it's for the best, young lady. First class isn't really suitable for children. Amara's eyes filled with tears, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry. She had been raised to respect adults, but this felt wrong. Her father's words echoed in her mind, you deserve the best. Reluctantly, she gathered her things and followed Sarah to a seat in the economy cabin. As she sat down, the whispers and stares of other passengers felt like daggers. She hugged her bear tightly, her heart heavy with disappointment. Back in first class, Charles settled into Amara's former seat with a satisfied sigh. Sarah avoided eye contact with the other passengers, focusing instead on performing her duties. But beneath her composed exterior, guilt gnawed at her. In the economy cabin, Amara stared out the window, her once bright spirit dimmed. She thought of her father, of her mother's words, and of the injustice she had just experienced. Though her young mind struggled to process it all, a seed of determination took root. A father's determination. Jordan Ellison paced the living room of his home, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. He had received the text from Amara moments ago, short, but enough to send his heart racing. Daddy, they moved me to a different seat. I'm okay though. Love you. He frowned, reading the message over and over. Something about it didn't sit right. Amara's excitement had been palpable that morning, she had been counting down the days to this trip. The idea that she'd casually mention being moved to another seat, without her usual exclamation points and emojis, made his gut twist. He called the airline's customer service line, determined to find out what had happened. The hold music droned on as Jordan glanced at the framed picture on the wall, a family photo taken just months before his wife's passing. Amara was sandwiched between them, her smile as bright as the sun. Jordan clenched his jaw, his protective instincts flaring. He had promised his wife that he would protect their daughter, nurture her dreams, and never let the world diminish her light. Thank you for holding. This is Angela. How can I assist you today? A polite voice finally greeted him. Jordan took a deep breath. Hi, Angela. My daughter, Amara Ellison, is on flight 237 to Washington, D.C. She's traveling alone, and I just got a message from her saying she was moved from her first-class seat. I need to know why. There was a pause on the other end. Let me pull up her reservation, Mr. Ellison. One moment, please. Jordan's impatience grew as he waited, the seconds stretching into what felt like hours. He could hear the faint tapping of a keyboard in the background before Angela returned. Mr. Ellison, I see here that your daughter was originally seated in first class. It seems there was a request to relocate her to another section of the plane. A request? Jordan's voice sharpened. Who requested it? I don't have that specific information, but I can assure you that we take the comfort and safety of unaccompanied minors very seriously, Angela replied, her tone calm but non-committal. Comfort? Jordan repeated, his voice rising. How is moving a 10-year-old girl to a less comfortable seat considered ensuring her comfort? She had a first-class ticket. I paid for it. I understand your frustration, sir, Angela said carefully. I can escalate this to a supervisor if you'd like. You do that, Jordan snapped. And while you're at it, I want a detailed explanation of why this happened. My daughter deserves an answer, and so do I. On the plane, Amara sat quietly in her economy seat, her sketchpad open but untouched. She stared out the window, watching the clouds drift by. Her heart ached with a mixture of confusion and sadness. She had felt so proud when her father handed her that first-class ticket, and now she couldn't shake the feeling that something about her, something she couldn't control, had made people decide she didn't belong there. She thought of her mother's words, of the bedtime stories about courage and standing tall in the face of unfairness. But how could she be brave when the world seemed so much bigger and more complicated than she had imagined? A kind older woman sitting next to her noticed the girl's downcast expression. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Amara hesitated before nodding. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice betrayed her. The woman smiled kindly. "First flight?" Amara nodded again. "I was supposed to be in first class," she added softly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. The woman's brows furrowed. "Were you? What happened?" "They said they needed to move me," Amara said, clutching her bear tightly. "I don't know why." The woman's face tightened, but she didn't press further. Instead, she patted Amara's hand. "Well, no matter where you're sitting, you're going places, my dear. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." Amara managed a small smile, the woman's kindness a balm to her bruised spirit. Back at home, Jordan's frustration had boiled into outright anger. After being transferred between multiple departments and receiving vague assurances that the matter would be investigated, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He opened his laptop and began drafting a post for social media. Jordan was not one to air grievances online, but this was different. He wasn't just fighting for Amara, he was fighting for every child who had ever been made to feel less than. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he recounted the day's events, his words raw and unfiltered. "My 10-year-old daughter, Amara, was removed from her first-class seat today and relocated to economy. She was traveling alone, with a ticket I worked hard to afford. No explanation was given, and the airline has provided no satisfactory answers. This isn't just about a seat, it's about dignity, about teaching our children that they deserve to occupy the spaces they've earned. Amara deserves better. Our children deserve better." He attached a photo of Amara from that morning, her wide smile and shining eyes a stark contrast to the image of her he imagined now, hurt, confused, and questioning her worth. After hesitating for a moment, he hit post. The response was immediate. Within minutes, the post began to gain traction, with comments pouring in from friends, family, and strangers alike. Some shared similar experiences, while others expressed outrage on Amara's behalf. As the hours passed, the post went viral, sparking a larger conversation about bias and systemic inequality in everyday spaces. On board the plane, Sarah Caldwell was feeling the weight of her decision. She had convinced herself that moving Amara was the right thing to do, but the unease gnawed at her. The disapproving glances from some passengers in first class had not gone unnoticed, and she couldn't shake the image of Amara's tearful eyes as she led her to the economy cabin. As the flight neared its destination, Sarah decided to check on Amara. She found the girl sitting quietly, her sketchpad now filled with drawings of planes and clouds. Sarah crouched beside her. "Hi, Amara," she said softly. "How are you doing?" Amara looked up, her expression guarded. "I'm fine." Sarah hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'm sorry if the seat change upset you. Sometimes we have to make decisions quickly, and we don't always get it right." Amara nodded, though her eyes didn't meet Sarah's. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay, and they both knew it. When the plane landed, Amara was greeted by a member of the airline's staff who escorted her through the terminal. Jordan had arranged for her to be met at the gate, and as soon as she saw him, she ran into his arms. "Daddy," she cried, her composure finally breaking. Jordan held her tightly, his heart breaking at the sound of her sobs. "I've got you, baby," he murmured. "You're safe now." As they made their way to the car, Jordan asked gently, "What happened, Amara? Why did they move you?" Amara explained everything as best as she could, her young mind struggling to articulate the mixture of emotions she had felt. Jordan listened intently, his anger simmering beneath the surface. By the time they reached home, his resolve had hardened. This wasn't just about Amara anymore. This was about challenging a system that had failed his daughter, and countless others like her. Over the next few days, Jordan's social media post continued to gain traction, catching the attention of local news outlets. Reporters reached out, wanting to share Amara's story. At first, Jordan hesitated, worried about exposing his daughter to public scrutiny. But when Amara overheard him discussing it, she surprised him. "Daddy," she said, her voice steady, "if this helps other kids like me, then I want to tell my story." Her courage moved Jordan to tears. Together, they appeared on a morning news program, where Amara spoke with remarkable poise about her experience. Her words struck a chord with viewers. "I just wanted to sit in my seat. I didn't understand why I couldn't. My dad says I deserve to be anywhere I work hard to be, and I believe that." The interview went viral, sparking a nationwide conversation about discrimination, privilege, and the importance of teaching children their inherent worth. Advocates and organizations rallied behind Amara, turning her story into a movement for change. Meanwhile, Sarah Caldwell found herself at the center of a firestorm. The airline had launched an internal investigation, and Sarah's decision to move Amara was under intense scrutiny. She spent sleepless nights replaying the incident in her mind, grappling with the implications of her actions. The days that followed Amara's brave interview were a whirlwind for Jordan and his daughter. What had started as a small cry for justice had grown into a national movement. Jordan found himself answering countless phone calls and emails, while Amara continued to attend her youth leadership conference, carrying herself with a newfound confidence. Despite the chaos surrounding them, Jordan knew this was about more than just a single moment. It was about setting an example for his daughter and for children everywhere who might face similar injustices. As Amara focused on her conference, Jordan worked tirelessly behind the scenes. The airline had issued a lukewarm public apology, promising to review its policies, but for Jordan, this wasn't enough. He wanted real accountability, not just for the airline, but for the culture that allowed such biases to persist. He connected with civil rights organizations, advocacy groups, and even legal experts who offered their support. One of the most surprising offers came from a young lawyer named Samantha Green. Samantha, a rising star in the field of civil rights law, had reached out to Jordan after reading about Amara's story. She had been following similar cases of discrimination in various industries and saw this as an opportunity to push for systemic change. When she met Jordan in person, her passion for justice was evident. "Mr. Ellison," Samantha said during their first meeting at a local coffee shop, "this isn't just about one airline or one flight attendant. It's about the way society perceives who belongs in certain spaces. If we can challenge that perception, we can make a real difference." Jordan nodded, his jaw tight with determination. "I just want Amara to grow up in a world where she doesn't have to prove she belongs. I want her to know she's enough." Samantha smiled. "Then let's make sure she never forgets it." The two began working on a formal complaint against the airline, aiming to highlight the broader implications of what had happened to Amara. They drafted a powerful statement detailing not only the events of that day, but also the emotional toll it had taken on a young girl who had done nothing to deserve such treatment. The statement also called for concrete changes, including mandatory bias training for airline staff and a review of seating policies for unaccompanied minors. While Jordan and Samantha focused on the legal battle, Amara's story continued to resonate across the country. Schools used her experience as a teaching moment, sparking discussions about bias, equality, and standing up for what's right. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #AmaraSeat and #BelongAnywhere, as people from all walks of life shared their own stories of exclusion and perseverance. Amara, for her part, began to embrace her role as a symbol of hope. Though she missed the quiet simplicity of her life before all this attention, she understood the importance of what was happening. Her time at the Youth Leadership Conference only reinforced her belief that she had a voice worth sharing. Surrounded by other bright, driven young people, she felt inspired to channel her experience into something meaningful. One evening, during a quiet moment at the conference, Amara sat in her dorm room with her sketchpad. She began to draw an image that had been forming in her mind ever since the flight. It was a picture of a young girl standing on a cloud, her arms outstretched toward the sky. Behind her were silhouettes of people, parents, friends, strangers, all lifting her up, their hands reaching to support her ascent. At the bottom of the page, she wrote in bold letters, "We rise together." Amara didn't realize it at the time, but that simple drawing would become the emblem of a growing movement. Meanwhile, Sarah Caldwell was grappling with the fallout of her actions. The airline's internal investigation had concluded, and while she had not been fired, she had been placed on probation. She was required to attend a series of training sessions focused on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias. For Sarah, these sessions were more than just a professional obligation, they were a personal reckoning. One day, during a particularly emotional session, the facilitator asked participants to reflect on a time they had made a decision based on an assumption. Sarah hesitated, then raised her hand. "There was a little girl," she began, her voice trembling. "She was traveling alone, and I made a judgment about her, about where she belonged, based on nothing but my own biases. I moved her from her seat in first class to economy because I thought it was what others wanted. But it wasn't right. I hurt her, and I'll never forget the look on her face." The room was silent as Sarah spoke. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully confront the harm she had caused. By the end of the session, she was determined to turn her regret into action. She began volunteering with organizations that worked to combat discrimination, using her experience as a cautionary tale for others. As the movement sparked by Amara's story gained momentum, it caught the attention of several influential figures. Celebrities, politicians, and activists began to speak out, amplifying the message that everyone deserves to feel like they belong. Donations poured in to support educational initiatives and programs aimed at empowering marginalized communities. One particularly moving moment came when a prominent civil rights leader invited Amara to speak at a rally in Washington, D.C. Standing on a stage before thousands of people, Amara felt a mix of nerves and determination. She clutched the microphone tightly, her father standing just a few feet away for support. "When I got on that plane," Amara began, her voice clear and steady, "I thought I was just going to sit in my seat and enjoy my first flight. But what happened showed me that sometimes, we have to fight for the things we deserve. I didn't understand why they moved me, but now I know it wasn't about me, it was about them not seeing me for who I am." The crowd erupted into applause, and Amara continued, her confidence growing with each word. "My dad taught me that I belong anywhere I've worked to be. And I want every kid to know that, too. No matter what anyone says, you are enough. We are enough." Her words were met with a standing ovation, and as Jordan watched his daughter shine, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride. She was turning her pain into power, her voice echoing through the crowd like a beacon of hope. As the rally concluded, Amara and Jordan were approached by people who shared their own stories of discrimination and perseverance. Many thanked them for their courage, while others offered words of encouragement. It was a humbling experience, one that reminded Jordan of the importance of continuing the fight for justice. Over time, the movement inspired by Amara's story led to tangible changes. The airline implemented comprehensive bias training for all employees, along with new policies to ensure that unaccompanied minors were treated with the utmost care and respect. Other industries took notice, adopting similar measures to address discrimination and promote inclusivity. For Amara, life eventually returned to a semblance of normalcy, though she carried the lessons of her journey with her. She continued to excel in school, her passion for leadership stronger than ever. And while she would always remember the pain of that day on the plane, she chose to focus on the positive, the connections she had made, the lives she had touched, and the knowledge that she had the power to make a difference. As she grew older, Amara never forgot the moment her father handed her that first-class ticket, telling her she deserved the best. It became a symbol of her worth, a reminder that she belonged wherever she chose to be. And as she continued to rise, she carried with her the belief that together, we could build a world where everyone felt they belonged. Amara's return home marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her but for her father, Jordan, and the countless people who had been inspired by her story. The whirlwind of media attention and public discourse had slowed, but its effects continued to ripple through their lives. The small house they called home now felt like a hub of hope and action, with letters arriving daily from people sharing their own experiences of exclusion and resilience. Each envelope carried stories of struggle, perseverance, and gratitude, and Amara read them all with a sense of awe and responsibility. Jordan had taken a leave of absence from his job to focus on the growing movement sparked by his daughter's experience. With Samantha Green's guidance, he had co-founded an organization called Every Seat Matters, dedicated to fighting systemic bias and promoting inclusion in spaces where people often felt marginalized. The organization quickly gained traction, becoming a platform for individuals to share their stories and advocate for change. Amara, despite her young age, became the heart of the organization. Her drawing, "We Rise Together," was now its official emblem, printed on banners, t-shirts, and posters that were sent to schools and community centers across the country. Her once simple act of self-expression had transformed into a symbol of unity and hope. In the months that followed, Amara adjusted to her role as a public figure. Invitations to speak at schools, conferences, and events poured in, but Jordan was careful to balance these opportunities with the normalcy his daughter needed. Amara still attended school, played with her friends, and went to her art classes, though her peers now looked at her with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Some even asked for her autograph, which made her giggle. At night, when the world quieted, Amara often sat at the kitchen table with her father, going through the letters people had sent. One evening, as she sifted through a particularly large pile, a letter caught her attention. It was written on crisp, elegant stationery, and the handwriting was neat and deliberate. "Daddy, look at this," Amara said, handing the letter to Jordan. Jordan unfolded the paper and read aloud. "Dear Amara, my name is Elena Ruiz, and I am a flight attendant. I have been following your story since it first broke, and I want you to know how deeply it moved me. Like many others, I have had moments where I let assumptions guide my actions, and your bravery has inspired me to confront those moments and do better. Your story has reminded me that every passenger, no matter their age, race, or background, deserves respect and dignity. I am writing to thank you for being a beacon of hope and change. Because of you, I have joined efforts within my airline to create a mentorship program for flight attendants, focusing on empathy and inclusion. I hope one day we can meet so I can thank you in person for the lessons you've taught me, and so many others. With admiration, Elena Ruiz." Jordan placed the letter down, his heart swelling with pride. "See what you're doing, Amara? You're making people think differently. You're making them want to be better." Amara smiled shyly, but didn't say anything. She wasn't sure how to respond to the weight of her impact. It was both humbling and a little overwhelming. A few weeks later, Jordan received a call from Samantha. The airline had contacted her with an unexpected proposal. After months of public pressure and internal reflection, they wanted to host a summit focused on inclusivity and customer experience, inviting stakeholders from across the aviation industry. They hoped Amara and Jordan would attend as honored guests and speak about their journey. Jordan was skeptical. "What do you think, Samantha? Is this just a PR stunt?" Samantha hesitated. "It might be. But it could also be an opportunity to push for real change. If they're willing to listen, we should take the chance." Jordan agreed, though he remained cautious. He explained the invitation to Amara, careful to frame it as her decision. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to, sweetie. It's a big responsibility." Amara thought about it for a moment before nodding. "I want to, Daddy. If it helps other kids, I want to go." The summit was held in Chicago, in a grand conference center filled with airline executives, flight attendants, and advocacy groups. The room buzzed with anticipation as Amara and Jordan arrived. Amara wore a dress her father had bought for the occasion, a light blue fabric that complemented her dark skin beautifully. She clutched his hand tightly as they were escorted to their seats near the stage. As the event began, various speakers took the stage, discussing everything from customer service to the importance of diversity in the workplace. Though the words were polished and professional, Jordan could sense the underlying tension. The industry was under scrutiny, and everyone knew it. When it was Amara's turn to speak, the room fell silent. Jordan walked with her to the podium, standing behind her for support. Amara took a deep breath and began. "Hi, everyone. My name is Amara Ellison. I'm 10 years old, and this is my first time speaking at something like this." The audience chuckled softly, her innocence disarming them. "A few months ago, I got on a plane for my first flight ever. I was so excited to sit in first class, because my dad said I deserved it. But something happened that made me feel like I didn't belong there. They moved me to a different seat, and I didn't know why. It hurt." Her voice trembled slightly, but she pushed on. "At first, I thought it was my fault. Like maybe I did something wrong. But my dad told me it wasn't my fault, and he taught me something really important. He said that everyone deserves to feel like they belong, no matter what they look like or how old they are." Amara looked around the room, her eyes meeting those of the executives seated in the front row. "I'm here today because I want to make sure no other kid feels the way I did. I want us to build a world where everyone knows they're enough. We can do better. I know we can." When she finished, the room erupted into applause. Jordan stepped forward to place a comforting hand on her shoulder as she stepped away from the podium, her heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and pride. The rest of the summit was a blur, but Amara's speech became the highlight. It was quoted in news articles and shared widely on social media, reinforcing the message that change was not just necessary, but possible. In the weeks that followed, the airline began implementing the changes Amara and Jordan had advocated for. They introduced mandatory training for all employees, revamped their policies for unaccompanied minors, and launched a scholarship fund in Amara's name to support young leaders from underrepresented communities. For Amara, life gradually settled into a new rhythm. She returned to school, where her classmates treated her like a hero, though she insisted she was still just Amara. She continued to draw, filling her sketchpads with images of hope and resilience. And though her journey had been challenging, she felt stronger for it. One evening, as Jordan tucked her into bed, Amara looked up at him with a thoughtful expression. "Daddy, do you think Mom would be proud of me?" Jordan's throat tightened, and he nodded. "She'd be so proud, sweetheart. You've shown the world how brave and amazing you are." Amara smiled, her eyes heavy with sleep. "I just want to make things better." "You already are," Jordan whispered, kissing her forehead. As he turned off the light and closed the door, Jordan stood in the hallway for a moment, reflecting on how far they had come. The road ahead was still long, but he knew they would walk it together. Amara's light, undimmed by the trials she had faced, would continue to guide them and inspire the world. The movement sparked by Amara's story continued to evolve, branching into areas Jordan and Amara never anticipated. What had started as a fight for justice on a single flight had become a nationwide call for inclusivity and systemic change. Amara was no longer just a little girl with a first-class ticket, she was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the possibility of a better future. Months turned into a year, and life began to settle into a new normal for the Ellison family. Jordan had returned to his job, balancing his work with his role in the growing organization Every Seat Matters. Amara, now 11, found herself juggling school, art, and her unexpected role as a public figure. While she cherished the opportunities to inspire others, she sometimes longed for the simplicity of her life before that fateful flight. One rainy Saturday morning, Amara sat in her room, surrounded by sketchpads and art supplies. She had been working on a new piece, a sprawling, colorful mural that depicted people of all ages, races, and backgrounds coming together under a canopy of stars. Each figure held a small light, their collective glow illuminating the night. She titled it Light in the Darkness. Her father knocked gently on the door. "Amara, can I come in?" "Sure, Daddy," she said, not looking up from her work. Jordan entered, holding a thick envelope in his hand. "This just came for you," he said, placing it on her desk. The return address caught her attention. It was from the airline. Amara's eyes widened. She put down her brush and opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a formal letter, along with a set of documents. She read the first few lines aloud. "Dear Miss Ellison, we are pleased to inform you that, as part of our commitment to learning from past mistakes and creating a more inclusive future, we are launching a new initiative, the Amara Ellison Fellowship. This program will support young leaders who are working to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in their communities." Amara looked up at her father, her eyes shining. "Daddy, they named a fellowship after me." Jordan smiled, his pride evident. "That's because you've inspired so many people, Amara. You've shown them what it means to stand up for what's right." The letter continued, detailing the fellowship's mission to fund projects led by young people who wanted to make a difference. It also included an invitation for Amara to speak at the program's launch event in New York City. The event would coincide with the unveiling of a new art installation at the airline's flagship terminal, a mural based on Amara's We Rise Together drawing. Amara was overwhelmed but excited. She had always loved art, and the idea that her work would be displayed in such a public space filled her with a sense of purpose. "Can we go, Daddy?" she asked eagerly. "Of course," Jordan replied. "This is your moment." The days leading up to the event were a blur of preparation. Amara practiced her speech with Jordan's help, while the airline worked with her to finalize the mural design. They had taken her original sketch and expanded it into a massive, vibrant piece that would cover an entire wall of the terminal. The figures in the mural were given more detail, each representing different walks of life. Amara insisted on adding a small girl with a stuffed bear, standing confidently among the others. When the day of the event arrived, Amara and Jordan flew to New York, this time seated in first class, without any issues. The flight attendants, aware of who Amara was, treated her like a VIP, but she remained humble, smiling politely and thanking them for their kindness. At the terminal, a crowd had gathered for the unveiling. Journalists, artists, community leaders, and even a few celebrities were in attendance. Amara stood backstage, clutching her note cards tightly. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair neatly braided, and her mother's necklace, a small locket, around her neck. Jordan knelt beside her, his hands resting on her shoulders. "You nervous?" he asked gently. "A little," Amara admitted. "What if I mess up?" Jordan smiled. "You won't. Just speak from your heart, like you always do. Everyone here believes in you." Amara nodded, taking a deep breath. When her name was announced, the crowd erupted into applause. She walked to the podium, her heart pounding but her steps steady. She looked out at the sea of faces and began. "Thank you all for being here today," she said, her voice clear and steady. "A little over a year ago, I got on a plane for my first flight. I was so excited because I felt like it was the start of something special. But something happened that made me feel like I didn't belong. It was hard to understand, but my dad taught me something important, that I do belong, and so does everyone else." She paused, glancing at the mural behind her. "This drawing started as a way for me to process what I was feeling. I didn't know it would become something so big. But I'm glad it did, because it means we're talking about things that matter, about fairness, about kindness, and about seeing each other for who we really are." Amara smiled, her confidence growing. "This mural isn't just about me. It's about all of us. It's about how we rise together when we lift each other up. And I hope that when people see it, they remember that they have the power to make a difference, too." The audience erupted into applause, many wiping away tears. Amara stepped back, her heart soaring as she watched the crowd's reaction. The mural was officially unveiled moments later, and gasps filled the air as the massive artwork was revealed. The vibrant colors and intricate details captured the essence of Amara's vision, and at its center stood the small girl with the bear, shining brightly. Over the next several months, the fellowship program took off, with dozens of young leaders applying to fund projects that addressed issues in their communities. From anti-bullying campaigns to environmental initiatives, the program became a beacon for change, driven by the very spirit Amara had embodied. For Amara, life returned to its normal rhythms, though she carried the lessons of her journey with her. She continued to excel in school and pursued her love of art, dreaming of one day becoming an illustrator or a muralist. Though she still faced challenges, she approached them with the resilience and wisdom she had gained. Jordan, too, found a renewed sense of purpose. Through Every Seat Matters, he worked tirelessly to ensure that Amara's legacy would endure, advocating for policies that promoted equity and inclusion in industries far beyond aviation. Years later, as Amara prepared to graduate from high school, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that first flight. She had grown into a confident, compassionate young woman, ready to take on the world. Her mural at the airport remained a symbol of hope, seen by millions of travelers each year. On the day of her graduation, Jordan handed her a small box. Inside was a ticket, a first-class ticket to her dream destination, Paris, where she had always wanted to study art. Amara's eyes filled with tears as she hugged her father tightly. "You've earned this," Jordan said, his voice filled with pride. "And don't ever forget, you belong anywhere you want to be." Amara smiled, her heart full. "Thank you, Daddy. For everything." As she boarded the plane for her next adventure, Amara carried with her not just the lessons of her past, but the unshakable belief that she could rise above any challenge. And as the plane lifted into the sky, she looked out the window, her heart soaring with the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be.